They're getting desperate. They're getting real desperate. But what we gonna do is take a real look. And when I say look, I don't mean just a, visual comparison. When I say look, I mean we're gonna dive into Olmec culture and tradition, ritual and rulership. A lot of people are continuing to push this disingenuous concept that the Olmec were Negroes based on 17 colossal heads that were found in the Yucatan. 17 colossal heads of the thousands and thousands of Olmec artifacts. People want to base the claim of Olmecs being Negro based on the 17 colossal heads. So, my intentions, as they have been since this conversation began in about 2007, which is why in 2009, not only did I cop the books, but I booked the flight. And I flew down to Mexico, to the Yucatan, and we visited 6 sites. We visited La Venta. That's where the mother mound of Olmec culture is found. We visited San Lorenzo, which is the most Olmec heads were found in San Lorenzo, which makes San Lorenzo an important place. So we're currently working on a documentary, which a lot of this information is going to be discussed in the documentary. But right now, what I want to do is start walking people through it, because we're not going to be able to cover everything in the documentary. So I'm going to walk you people through some things. Now, I need you to understand that I did go to these places in 2008 and I filmed. We spoke to archaeologists, scientists, university historians, did a very thorough, I don't want to say investigation because that sounds so full of it. We did a thorough deep dive, as deep as 2 civilians could, into what was truly going on, or what truly happened in the Yucatan concerning the Olmecs and who they were. People had been making all types of claims about the Olmecs being African, and that never sat well with me. So, like I said, I'm the type of person that says, let's let these people speak for themselves. In order for me to hear what they had to say for themselves, I had to travel to Mexico. So here we are in 2000, about to be 24. And this book was presented to me. Now, this is a book anyone can get. You can order this book online, right? And this book validated everything that I was told and taught when I was in Mexico concerning the Olmecs, who they are, the technology, the civilization. But the people who actually wrote this book, the individuals who are responsible for preserving much of this Olmec, much of the artifacts. We're not just talking about the 17 colossal heads. There's thousands and thousands of Olmec artifacts. There are Olmec masks, right, which actually show you what the people actually look like, right? And we're gonna get to that. So, of the many Olmec artifacts, the people I received this book from were the actual people who were responsible for retrieving much of the Olmec artifacts that weren't lost to different organizations, clandestine organizations. From what I was told, these people were smuggling much of the artifacts out to preserve them in the story. So, over the past few weeks, I've had the opportunity to sit with some people who have done some real research. And this is who presented this book to me. So, as I said before, anybody you can order this book online. It's not expensive. And if you actually read this book, it's going to clear up a lot of the confusion that you're being taught by these people who are guessing. So, the Olmec world, ritual and rulership. So what I'm going to do first is there's a article here from looks to be an old newspaper. So I'm going to read this article which sets up this book. So I was handed this book by family members. So all like this article that's clipped up in here, this is not my book. I didn't clip this article. There's some notes on this side of the page. But these are, like I said, this is the book that is owned by the actual people who are responsible for retrieving much of the artifacts. So I'm going to let them walk me through this book. So let's start with this article. New evidence of early form of writing in Mexico. Centuries before the famously literate Mayas, even before the Zapotecs, the Olmecs of ancient Mexico were carving symbols on stone and ceramics 2,600 years ago in what a team of archaeologists thinks is the earliest form of writing ever found in the New World. In a report being published today, archaeologists led by Dr. Mary E.D. Pohl of Florida State University in Tallahassee say they discovered writing symbols or glyphs on a cylinder seal used to make imprints on fragments of greenstone plaque. The artifacts, dated at about 650 BC, were excavated near the prominent Olmec site of La Venta, close to the Gulf of Mexico in Tabasco State, in southern Mexico. The researchers said this was strong evidence that pre-Columbian writings originated on the coastal plain there. Scholars had previously traced the earliest American writings to about 300 BC and to the Zapotec culture centered in Monte Alban in Oaxaca State. Mayan writings developed some 500 years later and further south in Mexico and Central America. The new discovery has focused attention on the Olmec civilization, which flourished from 1300 to 300 BC, as innovative and a wellspring of most subsequent Mexican cultures. The Olmecs were best known until now only as the bold, mysterious sculptors of colossal stone heads carved with huge lips. Writing in the journal Science, Dr. Pohl's group said the new artifacts reveal that the key aspects of Mesoamerican scripts were present in Olmec writing. The Olmec writing has not been deciphered, but several glyphs, the researchers said, shared several similarities with much later Mayan words. The archaeologists also said the excavation of produced compelling evidence of a connection between Olmec writing, the sacred 260-day calendar, and kingship, all hallmarks of later Mesoamerican cultures. We're seeing evidence of a mother culture, Dr. Pohl said in a telephone interview. Such a role for the Olmecs made sense, she said, because they may have been the first known peoples in Mesoamerica to have a state-level political structure, and writing is a way to communicate power and influence. Other scholars reached to the new findings with fascination and caution. As expected, several scholars raised questions about characterizing the glyphs as elements of true writing, whether they were simply pictures or objects of people or represented spoken language. A few said they suspected the dates for the artifacts should be more recent. It's an interesting find, but we need to wait and see what it means, said Dr. Joyce Marcus, a University of Michigan archaeologist who is an authority on the Zapotecs. Dr. Michael D. Coe of Yale, an authority on Mayan culture, said that until much more evidence of Olmec writing was uncovered, Dr. Pohl's interpretation would remain speculative and the Olmec role in early writing would be an open question. It's controversial, but that's all right, Dr. Coe said at the report. It's worth publishing. By a loose definition, Dr. Coe said the glyphs on the artifacts are certainly writing. In particular, he noted the drawing of a bird with symbols coming out. The bird is talking. He's saying something, Dr. Coe explained. One of those symbols looks very much like one of the Maya calendar glyphs, a day name. Dr. Coe was referring to a bird, perhaps representing a king dressed as a bird, depicted in the excavated cylinder seal. Two glyphs emanate from the bird's beak, like words from modern-day cartoon figures. The image seems analogous to speech scrolls that are common in later Mayan art. Dr. Pohl interpreted the word as meaning king and three ajah. The latter is the name of a day in the sacred calendar that could have been used as a personal name for a king, which is common in the tradition. The cylinder, the size of a human fist, was apparently used like a roller stamp with ink or paint applied. The roller was used to spread the imprint of a pictograph or word symbol on cloth or over someone's body. Clothes and jewelry were important items of display to show your rank and status, so it would show you were part of the elite to be able to display your connection to the ruler, Dr. Pohl explained. In their report, members of Dr. Pohl's group said they identified other glyphs incised on fragments of a greenstone plaque that was dug out of refuse deposits on the site of San Andres, 3 miles from La Venta. The evidence for writing in a second medium, the archaeologist said, strengthened the argument that the writing system was indigenous to that Olmec region. Let's read that again. The evidence for writing in a second medium, the archaeologist said, strengthened the argument that the writing system was indigenous to that Olmec region. So Clyde Winters talking about it was Mandingo and all that. The actual people that found the glyphs did not connect it to any African or Mandingo. These are the people who actually found it. All right? Not Clyde Winters who came across it second, third, fourth hand, whatever. These are people that was on the scene. All right? The authors of the report, besides Dr. Poe, were Dr. Kevin O. Pope of Geo Echo Arc Research, a Maryland company that specializes in geological and archaeological projects, and Dr. Christopher Von Nagy of Tulane University in New Orleans. I know this is very controversial, Dr. Poe said in an interview. We feel we have made a good case for writing in the Olmec culture, but we also recognize there's more research to be done. So this is an old article. It's cut out, so I don't know what the date is on here. Find it. But so that's just an interesting article that is pinned into the front of the book. Now we have our forward and our acknowledgments. I'll let those of you who would like to get the book, I can read all that. What I'm doing is start with this page, Preparing the Way. Over here it has a map of Mesoamerica, Mexico, Guatemala, Gulf of Mexico, so on and so forth. So before we get into this, and this is just a teaser, but before we get into this, I need the people to understand that everything that you've been taught about the Olmecs, you've been taught about it from a perspective of people who are basing their claims on appearance. Had any of them gotten to the actual culture and religion and religious expressions of the Olmecs, you would have a better understanding of what you're looking at. I'm going to start putting this information out and giving you resources to go see for yourself, because I see there's a push going on now amongst all these fraudulent fake motherfuckers to try to regalvanize and reclaim this Olmec identity. So it's time we drop the documentary. And as we lead into the documentary, I'm going to be doing little builds like this to prepare you for the actual documentary without giving it away to you. I could give it away to you right now, but you need to see these things. You need to see them and understand it from a cultural and religious perspective. And if people say the Olmec weren't religious or they didn't have a religion, they're just running their goddamn mouth. They're running their mouth. Okay? So let's start here. Preparing the Way. David A. Friedel. The art of the Olmec civilization, now more broadly termed the middle formative ceremonial complex of Mesoamerica, continues to astound and inspire us 50 years after 50 years of intense study. We still can't quite believe that this convergence of brilliant conception and superb craft occurred at the very beginning of Mesoamerica's civilization. The fact is no longer in serious dispute. However, and we are left to wonder, the fact is in no longer dispute, however, and we are left to wonder what there might be about this part of the Americas' geographical place and natural environment that encouraged the sudden flowering of this great artistic tradition. We also have to ponder the enduring beliefs of the people who wandered into and eventually settled Mesoamerica over millennia. Let's read that again. That's very important. Okay. The fact is no longer in serious dispute. However, and we are left to wonder what there might be about this part of the Americas geographical place and natural environment that encourages the sudden flowering of this great artistic tradition. What is it about the geographical location that made these people settle there and create this civilization? That's the question they're asking. What is it about that geographical location? And we will answer that question. We have also pondered the enduring beliefs of the people who wandered into and eventually settled Mesoamerica over millennia. We need to anticipate the spectacular consensus their descendants forged across language and distances in a vision of their shared world as an ordered and comprehensible totality. Despite the eons of slowly accumulated skills and experience behind them, civilized worlds, mentalities are ultimately invented. They are conjured out of immediate political necessity, combined with a special cultural opportunities in the work of sages. Once invented, however, worldly visions are locally reinvented, repeated over time, reflected the particular histories of regional societies within the broader civilization. The result is a mosaic of cultures that, while different and distinct, shares elements of a common intellectual heritage. The Olmec crystallization of ideas influenced later Mesoamerican religions and cosmologies in ways we are still learning to appreciate. So, let's read that again. Once invented, however, worldly visions are locally reinvented repeatedly over time. Do you understand that? Once invented, however, worldly visions are locally reinvented repeatedly over time, reflecting the particular histories of regional societies within the broader civilization. What does that mean? What are they saying to you? What are they saying to you? What are they saying to you? They're saying that traditions, right? Older traditions are reinvented as people relocate and move to different locations. They bring their creation stories with them and they reinvent the creation story in that location, right? So when we talk about people saying we come from right here and they're going back to their creation story, what they're explaining to you is that creation story comes from a much older one, and that creation story has now been superimposed over the general location that the people are in now. And that's a part of establishing civilization, right? Over a slow period of time, right? You start to acquire certain aspects of thought, technology, and organization that now create civilization or a higher form. But it always starts with traditional beliefs, all right, that result in a mosaic of cultures that, while different and distinct, share elements of common intellectual heritage. The Olmec crystallization of ideas influenced later Mesoamerican religions and cosmologies in ways we are still learning to appreciate. What they're saying is what the Olmec developed, you can see amongst many different civilizations all throughout North America, North and South America. That's what they're telling you. The basis of what you see in Cahokia came out of what you see in La Venta. The mound building, the plaza, the central, the structure of the civilization was first came together in Mesoamerica in what we call Levanta. And that science and technology spread throughout the Americas as a civilization. And other people took from those, reinvented it, and recreated it in their locations as they moved throughout. All right. So the result is a mosaic of cultures that, while different and distinct, share elements of a common intellectual heritage. The Olmec crystallization of ideas influenced later Mesoamerican religions and cosmologies in ways we are still learning to appreciate. All right. And all this will be explained and revealed as we get deeper into it. People migrated into Mesoamerica at least 10,000 years before the Olmec civilization. Remember, Olmec represents a civilization, not just a people. What is a civilization? It's when groups of people are organized and are able to achieve things on a beyond a community level, on a societal level. Right? That's what civilization is. Has to deal with language, has to deal with organization, architecture, right? Cosmologies, creation stories, mythologies, all these things coming together create civilization. People migrated into Mesoamerica at least 10,000 years before the Olmec civilization. For thousands of years, they lived in small groups of families, hunting animals and gathering wild plants. See, that's before the civilization arose. Everybody was doing things individually on their own in their own little groups. Civilizations bring these people together under common lore, common myth, common technology, common necessity, things of that nature. That's what civilization does. All right. Hunting animals and gathering wild plants, foods, plants and foods. Gradually, some of these plants responded to human use by becoming domesticated. The people in turn adjusted their plans for living in certain places for certain periods of time to the life cycles of important food sources, especially plants undergoing domestication. Archaeologists spend a lot of time both in the field and in the laboratory tracing out exactly how the Mesoamerican evolved a village farming life from this slow dance of animals, plants, and people. On the face of it, none of this has much to do with art, but for later Mesoamericans, and I think for the Olmec, art was very much the face of ordinary people's reality. To paraphrase the anthropologist Claude Levi-Strauss, plants and animals are not only good to eat, but good to think. It's hardly surprising that animals and plants, along with other important everyday things like water and fire, birth and death, and infancy and old age, are the stuff of which Olmec art is made. That right there, when we're done with that short paragraph right there really explains everything to you, but you won't understand it at this point. It is hardly surprising that animals and plants, along with other important everyday things like water and fire, birth and death, and infancy and old age, are the stuff of which Olmec art is made. Remember, Olmec art is made. Infancy and old age are the stuff of which Olmec art is made. And remember, these colossal heads, these masks, they're art. Art is created to tell a story. What is the story? And this is what everyone is missing. The story. There's a story as to why these colossal heads look the way they look. I know it feels good to say they look like Negroes and accept it as what it is, but there's a whole story behind it. And if you would actually just show some appreciation for Olmec culture, Olmec history, and tradition it's so easily digestible. It's right in front of your eyes. And I will show you how the tradition has become common for us, and we practice it daily. It's a part of our culture seamlessly. And I'll show you. I'm going to show you all of that. So where were we? All right. The burst of creative energy reflected in Olmec art, however, was also inspired by, in addition to thinking, public communicating, storytelling, singing, dancing, questing beyond the local area over 100 generations or more. Long before the first visible art in Mesoamerica, interesting and archaeological patterns occurred by which the archaic bands drifted into becoming formative villages. Richard S. McNeish, who in the 1960s directed the research in the Tehuacan Valley of southern Mexico, details some of these patterns. Tehuacan Valley provides especially powerful evidence since to straddle ancient trails leading from highland to lowland country, and its sites exhibit remarkable preservations of perishable artifacts and food remains of the archaic people. For example, by the 5th millennium BC, during the Coatliclan phase, in this high arid valley, evidence exists that three patterns have begun to coincide. Ritual, human sacrifice, right? That was one. Ritual human sacrifice in Coatliclan cave, roughly 5200 to 4800 BC, actually at the end of the El Regio phase. Trade in obsidian and other exotic commodities, and hybridization of domesticates. The first pattern confirms that we might suspect, namely, that broadly shared religious conventions of later Mesoamerica, such as human sacrifice. So they're saying the evidence of human sacrifice is at the foundation of what would later become a part of Mesoamerican cultures, and that would be, of course, human sacrifice. So they're identifying human sacrifice in Olmec culture. The first pattern confirms that we might suspect, namely, that broadly shared religious conventions of later Mesoamerica, such as human sacrifice and potentially bloodletting, were probably deeply rooted in archaic society. Sacrifice is the key expression of the covenant between the living and the dead, human beings and God. McNeish identified the sacrificial burials in Coatliclan cave as proof of strong shamanic leadership in El Regio phase society. Shamanic leadership. That's another key thing. Shamanic leadership. The second pattern in Tehuacan Valley is potentially related to the first. From the beginning of the record, outside materials like volcanic stone trickled into the valley. But after 500 BC, trade routes suggested trips to source areas, not simply visits with neighbors. Trade in both imperishable like stone and perishables like crop seeds marks this trend of expanded exchange networks. Obsidian, which is usually black or gray, although sometimes green or reddish brown, is natural volcanic glass, similar to other stones lacking clear crystalline structure. So, remember earlier it talked about what was special about the geographical location that caused these people to settle. Right? What was special about the geographical location that caused these people to settle? And they're telling you right here, right, of the volcanic ash and the obsidian, which is a result of volcanoes. All right. It's natural volcanic glass. That's what obsidian is. Natural volcanic glass. So, for those of you who don't know, and we're going to get into this, I'm not going to give it all away now, but volcanoes and the ash, the volcanic ash, is a tremendous fertilizer, right? So anywhere where you're going to have volcanoes that would have erupted in the past 100, 200, 300,000 years, what you're going to have is very fertile ground, irregardless of where it is, right? And that plays a big part in the story of the settling of Mesoamerica. And you're going to find out through this documentary and through these builds the importance of volcanoes to humanity. All right. So we're putting some pieces together. Those of you who are smart, you'll probably put it together. But you have to understand Olmec culture and what they're telling you. Right? So in order to understand this, you have to understand all of this. You can't just look at a head of someone, a carved piece of art, right? Which is like, do you know what artistic expression means? It's a way of telling deeper stories through your artwork. And by doing that, you alter the art. You alter it to tell different stories. So we're going to tell you the story of the Olmecs through their art, which reflects their history and their tradition and their language. It's all art. And that's something that, I don't know, maybe people who aren't artists, it's hard for them to grasp this. But all right, so let's get back to this. Obsidian, which is usually black or gray, although sometimes green or reddish brown, is natural volcanic glass, similar to other stones lacking clear crystalline structure. It lends itself through judicious chipping to being shaped into sharp-edged tools. The ancient people of Mesoamerica used a variety of stones to fashion chipped tools: axes, planes, drills, knives, spear points, scrapers, objects used in everyday work and in special activities such as war, sacrifice, and bloodletting. The curious fact about obsidian's early occurrence in Mesoamerica's archaeological record is that away from the areas of abundance. Normally found in the form of chips and flakes, useful for precision cutting tasks, later during the time of the Olmec, flake technology gave way generally to carefully prepared small thin blades. During the 16th century, Spanish eyewitnesses noted that Mesoamericans made weapons and sacrificial instruments from obsidian blades. I suspect this is very ancient practice and that the incipient, whatever that word is, archaic trade in obsidian chips and blades and cores for making them had to do with an emerging consensus across Mesoamerica concerning bloodletting. So now you have, I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but you have the obsidian. Remember this, you have the obsidian being used in connection to bloodletting, which is human sacrifice. Right? I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and give it all away. If you're taking notes, remember geographical location. Right? What was special about the geographical location? Now they're telling you evidence of what is being used in this location. Right? So we're already talking about volcanoes. There's a volcano in the area. And the results of the volcano yield positive effects on the general environment. Right? This is where the culture is coming from. The culture is how you interact with the land and the environment and the technologies you developed, right, which helps you establish civilization, right? All these things are going to be based on very basic things, all right? Most archaeologists think obsidian was employed for ordinary tasks, and I don't doubt this was part of its use. The problem is that traded and perishable materials might have served a variety of ceremonial and ordinary functions. Indeed, this will eventually be the crux of my argument about Olmec art. By the time of Olmec civilization, trade in obsidian blades was extensive and complicated. Among the classic Maya, the black fragment came to stand for the act of sacrificing, metaphorically donated in the glyph as harvesting. So now you have this stone, this obsidian, right? This obsidian is being related metaphorically to sacrifice and to harvest, right? Harvesting. Harvest may be what the ancient ancestors had in mind when they embarked on sacrifice and bloodletting. After 5000 BC, the people of Tehuacan and those in encampments elsewhere in Mesoamerica increasingly relied upon plant foods they not only harvested but also helped to grow. Helping plants to grow can be a canny business, requiring knowledge about how plants reproduce and how hybrids can be created for different desirable qualities. It is no accident that maize, the plant that came to be the great Mesoamerican staple, can only reproduce with human intervention, midwifery. We might say, in light of the probability that women were the gardeners in the archaic. Speculation aside, certainly the trend toward agricultural lifeways was fostered by the deliberate exchange of stock for hybridization across Mesoamerica. So you'll see that the concept of sacrifice, human sacrifice, right, and harvest and the food, all these things are all a part of their religious concepts. They're metaphors for one another, right? So they see a connection between these things. The same way you feed yourself, they feed the gods. We all know this from all of our indigenous cultures. Our indigenous cultures all over the world kind of deal with sacrifice and feeding the gods, right? So they can feed us. If we focus on the mere fact of hybridization, we can marvel at the ingenuity that produced it, but not appreciate the patent web of ideas that sustained it. The archaic Mesoamericans who could not have anticipated they were embarked on a path toward agriculture, engaged their knowledge and visions of the world in the daily practice of living. One aspect of that world was the journeying among places and the communities that settled into them. Journeying requires rules relating people to each other in peaceful ways, protocols, rituals, languages, and models of the world. The web of ideas sustaining gardening, which could never have been based just on local knowledge and must always have bound Mesoamerica's communities scattered through the mountains, valleys, and tropical forests. It connects them in a fundamental common understanding of the cycle of plants, through death and life, to the rhythms in the people, animals, the weather, the heavens, and nature writ large. Shaman is the general term for a person knowledgeable in nature and the supernatural. I think shamans were the ones who did the journeying, being connected, Mesoamericans were open to strangers, to strangeness, to innovation, to the absorption of different technologies and commitment and concomitant interpretation of the material world. Hybridization of cultures accompanied the hybridization of plants. Mesoamerica thus emerged from the Archaic, united in its reliance upon these hybridizations and understandings of them as a metaphor. All right, so that's very interesting. So the whole concept of maize, right? It's a hybrid, something that man had to be a part of, right? And what is this? A hybridization. It's a mixing of multiple things, right? Multiple seeds. Wow, this is incredible. So the whole concept that Mesoamerican culture is foundation is based on is hybridization. The maize god. Maize cannot be produced without man playing a part in it, without it being hybridized. So we're talking about the foundation of civilization is a result of hybridization. That's something to think about. So I'm gonna stop here. It's a long book. I'm gonna stop here. I'm not gonna rush through everything. I'm gonna go live soon. We'll discuss more of it. And anybody out there who would like to purchase the book and read along, be a part of this demonstration, please feel free. This is a part of the Mountain Lion Healing Circle, right? It's time to heal. It's time to heal. It's time to get into real information. So this is my offering to this healing process. I'm going to clear up this whole Olmec confusion of who they are. And all this is going to be in tune with the film we just shot called Mountain Lion. This is an artifact of a shaman in prayer. This is the prayer position in Olmec culture. So as we walk you through this, you're going to gain a great understanding of what it is you're actually looking at. I'm not going to rush you through it, all right? But we're going to definitely help heal the fractured psyche of our people. So with that, I say, the peace canal.